to the floor, please raise your hand, and we have a microphone going around. So please stand up, introduce yourself, and then you can ask your question. So we'll start back there. Mr. Dinino.
Thank you. My name is Con Dinino, former senator of Canada. Have been involved for a number of years with this issue, the issue of Tibet. This truly is an incredibly important international issue. It's a worldwide problem that needs to be addressed in a way that I probably assume, and from what I know, has not been. What is the United Nations and indeed the international community doing about this? Is there any action being taken at those levels to address this issue?
Want to translate that for?
I need help with the translation. Yeah, so I speak in Chinese and yeah. 在刚刚看到的西藏高原的例子里面，其实我们发现一个更严重的问题是，其实西藏高原是一个非常在气候敏感的地带，但是在国际的气候的谈判里面却发不出声音。
So from the example we saw from the Tibetan plateau, there's a serious problem that we can see the Tibetan plateau is very sensitive to climate change, but in the international coordinations and conference, their voice hasn't been heard by the international communities.
我举个例子。比方说，我们知道有很多的小岛国家，其实也是非常气候敏感的地区。可是这些小岛国家在气候谈判里面组成了一个蛮强的联盟，去表达他们自己的期望跟利益。这是一个很经典的例子。但我们看到西藏高原或者是藏族在这些气候谈判里面，他们的声音却被中国代表，而中国并不会把这样子的危机清楚地表达给国际社会。
So another good example is that you can see that some island countries in Pacific, they are also very vulnerable to climate change, and they could they could form alliance and become a very strong voice in the international communities. However, for the Tibetan communities, China will not show the problems, what happened in Tibetan plateau. So this is another good example that's showing that the voice of Tibetans community should be heard in the international arena.
西藏的社群跟台湾一样，我们其实都没有办法进到这个联合国的这个里面去表达我们清楚的声音跟需求。所以我自己很希望是在气候议题这个 global 的 agenda 里面，我们应该要开辟 UN 以外其他的管道，然后想办法可以让像这样子被忽略的声音，但却又这么敏感的声音，可以进到这个谈判里面，告诉大家严重性跟我们需要什么，那需要国际社会帮助什么。
So like Tibet, Taiwan also faces like the similar problem that we cannot participate in any UN affiliated organizations to make our arguments and the needs being heard by the international communities. So I would like to work with we could work together to create another access to make sure that our arguments and need and problems being heard by the international communities.
中国政府一直想要代表西藏或代表台湾在气候的议题上面来垄断这个代表权，这件事情我们应该要非常有意识的去突破它，甚至去打破它。因为中国参与在气候议题里面，有他自己在全球霸权上面的利益，那他的参与也并不稳定。 常常只是为了要跟美国、要跟西方社会去做对抗，所以我们应该找到我们自己把声音发出来的路径。那这非常非常需要今天20几个国家的代表，我们一起共同把这个管道给创造出来。
So the Chinese government always trying very hard to represent Taiwan and Tibet's voice, especially in the climate change problems. However, we need to be conscious about this situation and trying to making a breakthrough. We need to create a roadmap to make sure that our voice being heard. So that's why this convention is so important, because we have more than 25 parliamentarians coming together, so we can work together to create another access to make sure the voice being heard.
Thank you.
Would you like to add to that?
A little bit. Since what Mr. Hong had said about the representation at the Environment Conference, UN Environment Conference, sadly, Tibetan, likewise Taiwanese government, we can't officially participate in such a conference. However, we attend COP conference every year to raise the importance of the Tibetan plateaus, and we call upon the international community to support and raise Tibetan environment significance at the global platforms. So we request, or we urge the countries around the world to recognize the global ecological importance of the Tibetan plateau, and then strengthen the climate change research on Tibetan plateau. Even though there are many scientific research coming out from Tibet, but most of the research are mainly done by the Chinese scientists. So we need an independent scientific research on the Tibetan plateau to have a clear picture of what is really happening on the Tibetan plateau. And other than this, we also urge the Chinese government to respect the traditional knowledge of the Tibetan and way of life. And there are increasing urbanization and tourism in Tibet, and we urge the Chinese government to strictly regulate such policies. So, last but not least, but we ask for the global climate action for Tibet, which is the world's third pole. And yeah, that's it. I want to thank you.
We have Putila Karpache from.
Thank you both for your presentations. My question actually is quite similar to the one that has already been asked, and I wanted to ask Mr.洪申翰, given that Taiwan is not been able to be represented in UN-affiliated organizations or conferences like the IPCC, what international venues or arenas has Taiwan been successful in raising the issue of the climate crisis? And has there been areas where you have seen more success than others? A little bit about, how you've been able to get there, because I'm thinking that, perhaps there might be some lessons we can learn as well to bring Tibet into the international stage. Thank you.
OK， 事实上我并不觉得台湾的经验已经足够称为成功了。
To be honest, I don't think that the experiences Taiwan, you can say it is a success.
确实，就像刚刚说的，因为 climate change 是一个全球性的议程。可是我们在这种全球性的议程里面被中国高度的打压，所以这也导致台湾其实在因应气候议题上面，我们是比西方或者是一些敏感国家来得慢的，这是事实。
Like the previous presentation, the climate change is a global issue. Due to China's pressure on Taiwan, on international organizations, which also leading Taiwan acting rather slowly than other Western countries and sensitive areas.
但我们确实在过去几年，因为大力的推动能源转型，所以正在卖力的追赶中。
But however, Taiwan in the past few years, we are making a great efforts to push the energy transitions. So we do have some results.
当然，台湾接下来会大力的推动能源转型，有一个很重要的原因，是因为供应链会被这个国际的品牌去要求减碳，跟要更高的使用再生能源。
So the reasons why Taiwan trying to choose the path to energy transition is because that the international supply chain will require less carbon footprint, and also trying to require more parts being properly produced in this kind of climate change issues.
但在国际参与的层面上面，我们正努力的打开一些新的机会跟空间。比方说，在去年的这个 COP26，我们确实没办法参与正式的会议，但我们在 Glasgow 开始办像 Taiwan Days 像这个方式，跟我们的国际友人产生更多的合作跟对话。
But we do see some opportunities in international participation in climate change. Like last year, the COP26, which is held in Glasgow, we held a Taiwan Day to make sure that to demonstrate Taiwan's results and making sure our voice being heard.
但我想要强调一点是，我认为其实因应气候变迁，民主是一个非常非常重要的元素。
But the thing I want to emphasize that how to respond to climate change, democracy plays a critical role.
就举刚刚 adaptation 就调试这个例子来说，其实由上而下的调试是很难成功的。你必定要把社区的声音、在地的声音、在地人民的需求给这个一起发出来，然后去提出计划。真正属于这个真正的调试，才有可能会产生效果。
So take the previous presentation about adaptation. The way if you want to address this issue from the top down procedures, that you may ignore the local community's needs. So you need to consider the local people's need, and you can come up with a plan. So the real adaptation could be success.
如果中国政府关于西藏高原的调试的计划没有西藏人的需求跟声音跟在地的智慧的话，我认为这个调试的计划是很难成功的。这是民主跟这个气候变迁调试，我觉得是非常强烈的关联跟互相支持。
So any plan trying to address the climate issues on Tibetan plateau without local Tibetans' voice and support, it will be very difficult and effective for any plan. So that's why democracy is very important in this kind of climate adaptation.
Yeah, thank you.
Tenzing Jigme.
Thank you. My name is Jigme, and I'm a member of the Tibetan Parliament in exile. So I thought I'd just put this out as a food for thought for all of us here and the viewers online. As Honorable Si Kyung pointed out at the opening session, the essence of semantics in securing Tibet's statehood and nationhood, I too believe that any form of conversation on Tibet should eventually converge on Tibet as a nation, because ours is a fight as a nation and a people. And therefore, we should challenge any form of engagements knowingly or refrain from any form of engagements unknowingly using semantics that takes away the agency of presenting Tibet as a nation. Now, if I assume it right, Tibetan Plateau is a convenient term for China to use likewise. So I just wanted to hear what's your take on this, Dechen? And if Honorable Member of the Taiwan Parliament, Hang Sun, would like to add as well. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Jigme, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, I really agree with what you have said. And earlier, we have been using this term, the Tibetan Plateau, and this is not only I don't see this in political, perspectives. This is what I'm trying to look this environmental issue through the environmental perspectives, why Tibetan, instead of Tibet, why I'm using this Tibetan Plateau, even though I've tried to, try to reduce the use of the word Tibetan Plateau. However, the Tibetan Plateau doesn't only covers the whole of Tibet. It also have this whole of Himalayan region, including in this, India and other region nearby. So yes, that's the reason why I've been using this term, the Tibetan Plateau. Other than what you have said is correct, and whenever I can, I've been using the term Tibet, if there is, if the issue is related with the Tibet, and I use the terms Tibetan Plateau when the issue covers the whole of the regions.
在我自己的认识里面，气候议题有几个重要的层次。一个层次是在全球议程上面的层次，一个层次是在国家的资源动员上的层次，一个层次是在于关于 local 的这个社区上面能够展现智慧来调试的层次。
So talking about the climate change, I think there are multiple layers to address these issues. One is from the global point of view, the other is from nation point of view, the other is from the local people.
我确实认为在西藏高原的气候变迁议题会比台湾更辛苦的地方，因为一个中国政府，它把西藏高原的资源当作这种消耗，或者是就是用各种方式去消费，但不管它的永续。
So I have to admit that the situation in Tibetan Plateau will be more difficult than what happened in Taiwan right now. It is because that China, they will use the natural resources in Tibetan Plateau without the long-term plan and the restorations.
所以刚刚在这三个层次里面，在全球层次上面会被中国政府打压，但在国家的层次上面，一样就被当作是被中国政府掠夺的对象。这是我认为在西藏高原很多的行动会比其他的国家来得更加辛苦的原因。
So from the global level, of course, the voice from Tibetan Plateau will be silenced by China, and from the nation's level, of course, Chinese government will use any way to extract the resources from Tibetan Plateau.
所以就我自己的观点来说，我觉得就像刚刚讲的，是不是要把这个西藏视为一个 nation， 从一个 nation 的观点来重新去形塑在因应气候变迁上面关于西藏属于自己的计划，我认为这个事情是关键中的关键，而我们其他的国家也有义务要协助西藏的社群用一个 nation 的角度去表达西藏关于要怎么保护他们西藏高原这样子的计划跟期待。
So from my personal point of view, it matters a lot to see how we address these problems and the climate issues in Tibet Plateau. Because if we could help, all the nations could help Tibet to think about the problem, what happens in Tibet Plateau as a nation, as a point of view of nation, then that will make a big difference.
我觉得这不是只是当做一个议题 ，not just a issue， 而是要把整个西藏高原跟西藏的社群当作是一个主体来思考，这个主体需要用什么样子的方法，在时间跟空间之内保护西藏高原，来保护全球的环境。
So it's just not an issue. We need to think the Tibet plateau and the people living in Tibet as a whole society, so we can finally address these global issues together. Thank you.
Gentleman right there, please. Yeah.
I just want to raise few questions. Number one, the whole concept of the river drying up and affecting the downstream countries. I think the education aspect of this, the problem that is actually happening to the downstream and the melting of river glaciers is already well known as far as I can see. My main issue here is the downstream countries, the people who are raising the issue are only Tibetans, as far as we are concerned at this moment. But we are talking about the effect on the downstream countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Laos, and all these, Vietnam and all these. Now, for the net zero achievement, there is a funding for getting that. And why the environmentalists can't bring the downstream countries together to get the funding so that there is a actual effect on the melting. Because in terms of education, dissemination of the information, I think there is no doubt that the rivers the glaciers are melting. And the degree in which the net zero at 1.5 is not going to have any effect on the Tibetan glaciers. So our thinking and our education should be slightly different from just concentrating on glacier melting. What do you say to that?
You want to take this? Yeah.
Thank you. Whenever we attend the COP conference, we do visit Southeast Asian countries or the South Asian countries who are dependent on Tibet's rivers. So during COP26 conference, we got a chance to visit one of the downstream countries, the Bangladesh. And when we met the delegates there, we spoke about the Brahmaputra River, the Jamuna, which is called Jamuna in Tibet, in Bangladesh. When we told them that there are huge dams coming up on the Yalung Tsangpo, and which will have huge significance, a huge impact on the downstream once these dams are built. There are already 3 dams have been built on the Yalung Tsangpo, upper reaches of the rivers. So once the dams on the lower reaches of Yalung Tsangpo built, it will block almost more than half of the waters coming from Tibet. So when we told them that, they said, one of the delegation, they said, yes, of course we know about these issues. We know that there are dams being built, but it is very difficult to approach Chinese government because this area itself is very sensitive, it seems. So Tibet is very, issue they don't want to touch upon, even though it has a huge impact on them. So they said, why don't you all do something? Why don't you provide a platform where you bring all the other downstream countries together and make a common voice? So likewise, with these issues, when he raised such, issues, I thought, like, why not we bring all those downstream countries together and have provide a common platform where they all can come together, and it will be more stronger to approach the Chinese government. So in Southeast Asian countries, even though they have like Mekong River Commission, but Chinese government, they are not part of this commission. They are just an observer country. And so Chinese government, what they do is there are like around 11 dams has been already built on this mainstream of the this Mekong River. And recently in 2019, there are one report which came up, and it clearly says that because of these dams, there are drought happening in the Southeast Asian countries. However, with the Chinese might, because of its economic power and influence in the region, the downstream countries, it's very difficult for them to approach Chinese government in this such issues. So if we can, provide a common platform or to all these downstream countries come together and they can make a common voice against the Chinese government, I'm sure there might be some way where we can negotiate with the Chinese government on all this exploitation of the water resources. So even though Chinese government, they pledge on these having carbon emission peak before 2030 and achieving net zero emission before 2060s. However, we demand that it shouldn't be met at the cost of the exploitation of the Tibetan resources. Thank you.
Do you want to add to that, or? Okay. Yeah, I think I just want to say that we had a discussion with Dechen yesterday, and we talked about the importance of reaching out to those nations, ASEAN nations, the SAARC countries, because those are the countries that are directly impacted by these policies and this situation that's going on. So I think a strategy for the Kashak and maybe for our Kalyan here in the future would be to reach out to those countries, that are directly affected by these policies. So that's something to think about. Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I'm André Gattelin, French senator, and I am a member of the IPAC. This is not really a question, it's more a comment and a suggestion. Of course, all that had been said is true and really important, but we must also here denounce, I would say, the sham, the total deception that is the so-called Chinese policy in favor of struggling against climate change. It's a total narrative created by China, and when they joined in 2016 the Paris Agreement on the climate change, it was for them a way, a political way, to be more considerate inside the international community, and especially by the European countries. And they give fake information. They said that the United States produce 3 times more gas emission than China. It is not true. It's less than the double till the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. They do not say that last year the US emission was more than half less than the Chinese one. But this kind of rhetoric in favor of environment, in climate change, gets some incredible credibility among Western countries. And when our countries are today less naive in front of China on diplomacy, on military, on economy, we still consider them as fair partners for struggling the climate change and also be a very important part of the multilateralism. And I think I've discussed with French scientists or European scientists working on the Himalayan glaciers. They told me that the situation is awful, but they cannot really give the true figures because they couldn't get on and having the authorization to go to see the reality, to make measure in China. So we have to denounce that because it's a total fake. And another thing is that China invests a lot in green tech for some years. This year, an Italian report done by NGO is very interesting and show how they try to be the leaders and having all the Western country using their high-tech on environment. Okay, it could be nice, but it's a kind of dependency used by China. So we have to denounce this Chinese narrative on the struggle on China on climate change and the reality. We all know the soil pollution, with the air pollution, the deforestation, plus all what is done on the Tibetan plateau is something very awful. But we must insist on the fact that we are naive when Western countries believe that China is really acting in favor of reducing the climate change. Thank you.
Do you want to address that, or should we go on to the next? Okay, yeah.
Dear Chairman, dear friends, Jānis Martins, Skuja, Riga, Latvia. As I mentioned before, Tibet supporters for more than 100 years, but time looks younger. I am absolutely agree with idea, and we was the same idea, parallel with Honorable Sonam Frazi. Let's be honest, we don't need here to tell each other who is a China. We don't need to tell here each other who is Russia or others aggressors who right now lead or try to lead the world. And let's be honest, and maybe somebody wanna rise up who not agree with me. I call United Nation TDN, so that's mean United Nation to do nothing. And my question is somebody still believe in United Nations or not? Sorry, I'm not believe, because I see, and everybody see what's going on right now in Ukraine, and what United Nations to do for that. And we already know that President Zelensky told everything what he think about United Nations Security Council. So my question is, and same time what Honorable Sonam Frazi told, maybe there is time for another organization. And I don't want to say like only in regional platform for states or countries are around Tibet and China. But I talk about in Europe, in US, because there is members of different parliaments from all around the world. And we have some new initiatives in Europe, like 3C initiative. That's a political, economical, let's say, project. And this project, for me, is more hope than United Nations. So, and the same time, as I said, we need alternative, something to United Nations in our issues, and maybe parliamentarians who are coming here start think about this way. It's crazy idea. I'm not asked to organize new United Nations, but something crazy, and world belongs to crazy people. We need to do. The biggest problem, if yesterday we had refugees from Syria, today we have refugees from Ukraine. Tomorrow, we, in Europe, first of all, will have refugees from Tibet, from China, because of climate catastrophe coming. So, this is no question to somebody special, but let's think about it. Thank you.
would you like to make a comment? No pressure, no pressure. You wanna? Okay, yeah.
在某个程度上面，我同意应该要挑战 UN 是不是处理 climate change 一个最好的政治平台。
To a certain degree, I also agree with you that we need to think twice about whether United Nations is the best international platform to address climate change.
但是我会把几个层面给分开看。在科学的部分，我确实认为 UN 下面的科学体系还是扮演了很重要的一个角色，把整体关于 climate change 的影响，其实做了很好的组织跟拼凑。
But we need to see this question from different angle. First, if we are talking about science, the science team under United Nations actually did a very good job, to come up with a very good report pointing out this problem.
但是在做一个全球性的契约上面 ，UN 确实在这个平台上面，也很多人其实有提出批评，就像西藏这么藏区西藏高原这么敏感的一个地区，可是他们的声音跟他们的议题却很难在这个 UNFCCC 的议程里面被清楚的呈现，这一直是被批评的很大的一个点。
But if you are talking about how to deal with this problem on a global level, talking about signing up the global contract, United Nations, there are a lot of criticism on United Nations that they could not reflect all the voices in every places, like the Tibet plateau. What happened in Tibet cannot be reflected in UNFCCC. That's the best example.
所以我自己的看法比较是，在 UN 的系统外，是不是可以创造更多气候谈判多边或者是区域的平台，让这些可能在 UN 里面得不到好的支持的这些国家或者是族群社群，能够有一个新的机会，能够让大家看到。这些更敏感的地方，他们的需求跟他们的急迫性。
So, in my point of view, I think that outside the United Nations, maybe we could think about the possibility to create more international negotiations platform for more countries with more sensitive countries to these problems, and also that regional platform to discuss these issues and making sure their voice being heard.
但是我不赞成一件事情，是因为挑战 UN 的正当性跟功能，就让各个国家的行动变得零散或各行其事，这是我不赞成，我不赞成这种做法，因为零散跟各行其事的行动没有办法真正解决气候问题。
But on challenging the authority of United Nations, I do not support that we should deal with this problem without a unified actions, because climate change, the issues of climate change does need a unified actions among different countries.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I also partly accept what you have said. And in 1995, there's a convention on water resource sharing by UN. However, the Chinese have voted against that convention. So therefore, China is not obliged or not, obliged under such convention, and they can, independently do whatever, they want with all those transboundary water rivers. So there are no accountable for what China is doing on those major international rivers. And even though there are some, MOUs signed by the Chinese government, but there is no any water treaty signed between Chinese and the downstream countries. So the Chinese government have used those, water as a leverage to control the downstream countries. And in one instance, in 2017, during Doklam crisis, border crisis between China and India, and what happened is the Chinese government have stopped sharing hydrological data to India, because even though they have a MOU signed between these two countries, the Chinese government have they said that it is there are some kind of renovation going on in the hydrological station, so therefore they didn't share the hydrological data. However, they shared the same hydrological data to the Bangladesh's government, and this clearly shows that how the Chinese government can use this water as a political tools to control the other downstream countries. So in these terms, when we see through this terms, we can say that it is United Nations somewhat not strong enough to bring Chinese government and make accountable of what is happening on those international rivers. Thank you.
Final question, Janet.
Thanks, Dechen. Janet Rice, Senator from Australia. I'm interested in that suppression of data by the Chinese with water, and how accurate was the analysis of the impacts of climate change on Tibet and the downstream countries and the issues of water in the latest IPCC report? And I think you mentioned, Dechen, in your talk that there's a need for more independent research to be happening to understand what's happening environmentally in Tibet. Do you think there's any prospects of that being permitted by China?
If you see in this IPCC report, most of the research done on the Tibetan Plateau is mainly done by the Chinese scientists. So we can, in this latest IPCC report, which was released in August 2019, I guess, so 2020, it is stated that most of the glaciers on the Himalayas and the Tibetan plateaus are receding at a very fast rate, and these have due to the climate change, there are erratic and huge spatial kind of climate change impact having on the Tibetan plateaus. And overall, what I want to talk about is that Tibetan plateau Tibetan plateau is warming twice as compared to what's happening on the other region, and it needs attention. So that's what the IPCC report, not only in this IPCC report, in the previous IPCC report, there are many issues has been discussed, written over the report, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So this will bring us to the end of our session here this morning. I want to thank our speakers, both of them, for their presentations and really unpacking and informing us why Tibet and Tibet's climate and environment matters. I just want to end here by adding to the discussion on why you should care about climate change in Tibet. I mean, many of you here today live thousands of miles away from Tibet, and what happens in Tibet may or may not be affecting your daily lives and activities. So why should you care about Tibet? Let me tell you why. Because Tibet is the roof of the world. Not the roof of India, it's not the roof of Nepal, it's not the roof of China, it is the roof of the world. And I think that's really important for us to understand what that means. And like any roof over our head, if the roof leaks, and if there's damage on that roof, it slowly but surely affects the whole house. And that's the reason why we are here today, and that's the reason why this discussion is so important. Scientific research has shown that what happens to the environment in Tibet not only affects Asia, Southeast Asia, but also Europe, North and South America, and the rest of the world. At the same time, I also believe that when we have this discussion on climate change in Tibet, we must talk about holding China accountable. The Chinese government who is responsible for the destruction of Tibet's fragile environment. And we must clearly articulate that China's policy on climate and environment in Tibet is a violation of human rights. We must ensure that while we are having a discussion on climate and Tibet, we have to talk about the displacement of nomads. We have to talk about the mining. We have to talk about the damming, the diversion of rivers, and the dumping of nuclear waste in Tibet. Finally, we have to work together with our like-minded partners and countries, build coalitions, and come together to ensure that discussions and resolutions on climate at climate change conferences like the next conference of parties, COP28, next year in Dubai, includes Tibet, which is why your participation is very important. Thank you.